October 24th, 2024, Board of Mayor and Aldermen and Franklin Municipal Planning Commission Joint Conceptual Workshop, and we'll begin with the roll call. Commissioner Allen? Out. Mr. Franks? Out. Commissioner Harrison?
Here.
Commissioner Lindsay is out. Commissioner McLemore?
Present.
Commissioner Mann?
Present.
Commissioner Orr's here. Alderman Peterson?
Here.
Commissioner Williamson?
Present.
Alderman Berger?
Present.
Alderman Brown?
Present.
Alderman Potts? No. Alderman Baggett?
Present.
Alderman Barnhill? No. Alderman Blanton? No. Alderman Caesar?
Present.
Mayor Moore?
Present.
All right. Let's begin with the first item. Item number one is discussion of a development plan proposing 1,250 multifamily units and 240,000 square feet of assisted living with 6 modification of standards requests: loading area, connectivity, block perimeter, retaining walls, foundation height, parking minimums on approximately 68.83 acres located near the intersection of Goose Creek Bypass and Paytonsville Road at 4424, 4428, 4430, and 4440 Paytonsville Road. And this is the Erickson Senior Living PUD. Staff.
Thank you. The overall plan for the both independent living and assisted living facility meets the recommendations and guidelines of Envision Franklin for this area. And there are 6 modification of standards, and for the sake of time, I'll just focus on the ones that we are currently either not supporting or just need more information. The first being for the block or length of the block face, just for internal connectivity. As you can see in the exhibit, Block A is approximately 6,100 linear feet. The maximum that we have, I believe, is around 3,000 square linear feet. So it's about double the maximum that is currently permitted in our zoning ordinance. So that would be recommended for disapproval. Also, the increasing the overall height of retaining walls to 20 feet would not be supported. And they are also asking to remove the eastern connection for external connectivity. And I know the applicant is working with our engineering department on that, so we don't have a recommendation as of today, but I know they are working through that. So we can answer any other questions as they come up.
Okay. Applicant?
Hi, my name is Greg Gamble, land planner and landscape architect consulting for Erickson Senior Living. And I'm here tonight with Mary Ann Navarro and Margaret Suit with Erickson, sitting right here. Amy told me I had about 12 minutes, so I'm going to go fast, if I can. Okay, here we go. Is that the first slide? All right. Erickson is based in Baltimore, Maryland. They are one of the top 5 providers in the senior providers in the United States, and are the owner-manager of their campuses. They currently have over 30,000 residents in 11 states. This is not our presentation that Matt emailed. Sorry, everybody. Can you send it from your phone, Matt?
So we will bring up the presentation that they're emailing right now, but just for your reference, we will have to email that out later to you. because the one that's published on the agenda was the one that we received with the application. So this will differ from what you have on your, through your agenda packet.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that's awkward. I don't know how that happened.
Any major changes between what we received and what you're proposing, or is it minor stuff?
No. I don't know that there are major changes. Joey, do you mind pulling up the master plan for me? I think the most important piece in the presentation that we're presenting tonight is the new proposed alignment for Crothers Parkway. It is not what is shown on the screen here.
Okay.
Did you send the email? Okay. No,
No.
you did not. I don't know that I've had this issue before. First for everything, I suppose.
Any general information you can share while he's pulling it up?
Do you want to present the zoning ordinance items and do this one second?
It's a pretty lengthy presentation, so I'd rather go ahead and finish this one up.
I will be
first.
quick.
Jason's here now. We'll get him started.
Been waiting on you, Jason. Good to have you.
Where you been? We were in need of a song and dance guy. You gotta do it up here.
It's time for your comments on this project.
You gotta do it up here on top of the table. We're waiting on PowerPoint. It's fine. We're having the beauty of computers. They're good to work.
You already been to Florida, haven't you? Weren't you in Florida last week?
In between meetings tonight. Did you go in between meetings? Close. Here we go.
We're good. Do you know why it's watched out? Yeah, okay. All right, we'll go with it. Erickson is a CCRC, Continuum Care Retirement Community. The CCRC model includes independent living, assisted living, skilled nursing, and memory care facility all on the same campus. Residents pay a refundable entry fee for their 1 and 2 bedroom home and a monthly fee for meals and hospitality services. The average age of a resident at Erickson Community is 80. According to Williamson County, Franklin's population of seniors over the next 65 years is expected to grow over 100% in the next 20 years. It's not advancing. Next. Erickson's communities are all custom to the town or community where they are built, and Erickson is striving to make this Franklin community Franklin. A typical Erickson community of this size has approximately 500 employees, including healthcare, dining services, operations, hospitality, and security.
We're having technical difficulties with the computer itself bringing it up, so we're bringing it up a new time.
Yep. Yeah, you can go to the next slide.
Probably loading.
Okay. Okay. The one right before this one. Nope. Right after this one. Okay, great. So the property that Erickson is planning is approximately 68 acres located to the east side of Paytonsville Road and just to the east of Berry Farms Reams Fleming. You can see on this map, it's just south of where Goose Creek Extension will be extended to Long Lane. We have been coordinating with our neighbors regarding future infrastructure in the Goose Creek area. On the left, we have the current alignment of Crothers Parkway in the major thoroughfare plan. This alignment was designed and drawn before 850 acres was annexed into the city of Franklin in this quadrant prior to 2019. On the right, we have a proposed route that's preferred by the neighbors for the Parkway extension. Erickson has hired Sullivan Engineering to provide a grading plan and profiles to the engineering department, and it's currently under review. The revised plan is intended to be reviewed by BOMA in November at a work session with a recommendation to the Planning Commission in December, and the Planning Commission would vote on this alignment the same night as the Erickson plan is considered by the Planning Commission. In addition to the Crothers Parkway, Paytonsville Road will be improved to a 4-lane median divided boulevard. And the intersection of Paytonsville Road and Goose Creek Bypass will be improved to its full build-out. So with this plan, we're looking at improvements from the intersection of Goose Creek and then all the way down Paytonsville Road to the second access. Mill Crofton has requested a new 2 million gallon water tank to be constructed at this location here. Right now, their existing water tanks are to the north. This is their requested location for a new 2 million gallon water tank. And that tank will provide water for the newly annexed area within the city. A special consideration was added to Envision Franklin in the recent adoption. It states that the following uses are encouraged: uses with non-peak trip generation patterns. The residents at Erickson's facilities are typically driving between the times of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. They are not likely to be on the road during peak times. The staff changes are also in non-peak periods. Envision Franklin identifies this property with a maximum height of 6 stories. Erickson will have buildings that range from 4 to 6 stories in height. The Erickson Master Plan includes 1,250 independent living units and 188 units for assisted living, skilled nursing, and memory care. The campus is designed with a collection of 4, 5, and 6-story buildings, all interconnected with indoor air-conditioned bridges. The bridges provide an internal pathway for residents to get around on the campus in any weather. Of course, residents are encouraged to get outside to the parks throughout the campus, which are a very enjoyable experience. The buildings are located between 150 and 200 feet from Paytonsville Road to protect the view shed. This gives us the opportunity to create 2 small lakes on each side of the entrance of the main entrance. A new private street with public access will be provided north-south. parallel to Paytonsville Road to provide future connectivity for the neighboring properties. The campus will be gated, and the gates are located at the main entrance and at the secondary entrance road to the assisted living facility. The scale of the campus allows Erickson to provide services that are unmatched in senior living. They will be providing 24-hour site security. The security personnel are trained emergency response assist with medical emergencies. This training affords Erickson's team the ability to handle many emergencies like falls without calling 911. This is a big differentiator to other senior living facilities in our area. Erickson provides a long list of amenities for its residents, including 5 restaurants, all real restaurant experiences, not a cafeteria, indoor theater, indoor swimming pool, indoor fitness, indoor and outdoor pickleball, community gardens, and a grand central park. Erickson Health is the #1 geriatric care provider for seniors in the nation. The scale of their communities allows them to provide on-site medical with 4 to 5 physicians and additional care and coordinators. It is not mandatory that residents use the provided medical opportunity for wellness, but Erickson finds that their on-site availability is a convenience that residents find as a preferred option. Go into the next slide. The Central Park will contain many of the outdoor amenities for social events. And it really captures the heart of the mission for Erickson to provide abundant amenities to support well-being. The park is designed with water features, shade structures, amphitheater, indoor pool, and fitness facilities. There are other pocket parks throughout the community as well that will include outdoor pickleball, community gardens, and places for recreation. I'm going to have Eric Krull come up. Eric is the architect for Erickson, and I want to tell him to tell you a little bit about his vision regarding the architecture. Yeah. All right.
Thank you. The architectural style, we looked around the city and your county just to take a look at what we could pick up, and what we came to the conclusion was, there's a lot of farms, so we looked at the modern farmhouse design. So you'll see a lot of images here that bring in the natural stone, the warm colors, siding, very residential in nature, not hospitals. There's a lot of senior living communities that I think people associate to hospitals. This is very, very residential. It's very hospitality, and that's all picked up in the materials and the socialization that you see by having large windows and doors that front the streets, engaging socialization by just the use of placement of those amenities compared to the architectural style with the doors and windows. I think there's another slide, right? And part of the interior space and those amenities that you just heard Greg talk about also enhance the socialization that engages the streets, where you can, have dog walking parks and other amenities that energize the streetscape, which is very much what you're looking for in your Franklin master plan as well. So look at these seniors as very engaged in the community, and the architectural style is, really bringing back the essence of home, whether you're, in the urban environment or out in the farm in the natural setting that the site is at. So with that, I know we're running short on time.
Yes. Thank you. In front of you, you have an 8.5 by 11 package that I've provided regarding the modification of standards. The first modification of standards that we're requesting is regarding loading areas. We are required by code to park behind the building. So behind the building is where our seniors, 80 and 90 years old, will be accessing these buildings from their cars once they park. We are requesting that the loading zones, which are right now required to be in the back of the building where the parking is located, be located on the side of the building. And that's what we're showing in these blue rectangles. Those are 2 loading areas for our restaurants. And we want to make sure that we don't have conflicts between those delivery vehicles and our residents that are coming and going from their vehicles. We are also asking for, included in this modification of standards, the ability to do motor courts. Those are shown here in red. A motor court is where the van pickup would take place, and they typically stage 4 or 5 vans. You might have one van going to Publix, another one going to Panera, another one going to the spa for the day. So letting residents have an opportunity to have a gathering place that they know and familiar with for car pickup. The second modification of standards that we're asking for is regarding the block length. We have interconnectivity through the parking lot. Again, we're required to have parking on the backside, not the front. The block face is always measured based upon the frontage road. We've highlighted here in yellow the frontage roads. You can see that there is additional connectivity around the campus and convenient access to each of the parking areas, but those areas don't count as frontage roads, and so we are having to measure the full 6,000 square feet in order to meet that requirement. We have about 40% of our parking under the buildings in this master plan. So we're really trying to reduce the amount of surface parking that we have and work with the topography in a way where we can limit the amount of grading and disturbance on the site as well. On the next page, then, we have a modification of standards for retaining wall height. For multifamily, the maximum height of a wall in the zoning ordinance is 10 feet. We have an area that's located just to the south of the property line, right here, that is a stream and is a protected water resource. It has 60-foot buffers on both sides from the top of bank. It is a tree-lined stream. So we have about 120 feet there of trees that we're not removing, that are staying with that creek. And this retaining wall would have the low side on the creek and the high side on the entrance drive there to the assisted living facility. It's not 20 feet in height the entire length, only at the highest point. We are asking for a modification of standards for all of the building frontage that you see here in red on this map. We're asking that the finished floor elevation be even with the grade. We are going to have homes, apartments that have direct access out to the sidewalks where you can walk right out to the street from your home. And we need to make sure that we have ADA accessibility and aren't having to put ramps at each one of the doors. And so we're asking that for these buildings that they have direct connection at grade out to the sidewalks. On the next modification of standards, as Joey stated, we are working with planning and engineering on this, and this may or may not be a modification of standards when the development plan comes forward. But we've highlighted here in white the property boundary that Erickson has on its eastern side. Directly to the east is a large area that has 20 to 14% slopes. This area is a hilltop protection area, so it cannot be developed. And we have an area that is 500 feet offset from that, that is the HHO buffer. In that 500-foot area, if you have slopes that are 14% or greater, then that area cannot be developed either. It has to be preserved. So we wanted you to see the slope map. This has been provided as a part of the technical documents to city staff. On the screen, we're, again, working with engineering, working with planning to determine how some local roads might work. That's the image that you're seeing here on the screen. We felt like tonight it was important for you to see the topography and what's happening on the eastern boundary line. On the next modification of standards.
Can you go back and explain what those diagrams were again?
Sure.
There are elevation changes, but there are other things that are marked on there. I don't understand what they are.
Sure. No problem. This would be a potential future road that would be on property retained by the seller. to our north, and that road aligns with a road over here that is proposed by Berry Farms in the future. So it would be a four-way intersection on Paytonsville Road, and we're analyzing that road would be just to the north, right up here. And so we are analyzing with engineering an alternative that might be able to provide a road in the future that would not interact with these steep slopes that we have to the immediate eastern boundary along this property. To the south, likewise, this would align with the access that is the road that goes to goes to Ramsey's right now. So this would be a potential road that would then connect again over to Carruthers Parkway. The engineers had looked at some slopes and how steep that would be and if these roads would be possible to align. And so the engineering department and the civil engineer working with Erickson, as well as the Beasley family, their engineer, are all kind of working together. So we want to bring to you a holistic plan. We want to bring to you a plan that really looks at the region, that relates to Carruthers Parkway, Erickson's property, and then the potential future development of the other properties in this area. But as you can see, there's a lot of slope that's happening around this property and on this property, and so we're having to deal with the topography as well.
Greg, we don't have that, we have this. Can you orientate us on this to what you're saying?
I can. So on the map that you have there in your hand, that white line that you're seeing is the eastern boundary of the Erickson master plan. And you can see the hilltop overlay right here, and you can see the HHO buffer right here. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. So today you have in your ordinance, you have a parking, we can go to this one. You have a parking requirement that's identified as senior multifamily. And that is intended for age-restricted developments. That parking requirement is 1.5 parking spaces per unit. That is typically for 55 and older. This Erickson community is 80. The average age of the resident at Erickson is 80. In the ITE manual, which is the Institute for Transportation Engineers standard, the parking requirement for senior housing is 0.85 spaces per unit. We are requesting a modification of standards that really meets that in the middle at 1.2 parking spaces per unit for the independent living apartments. And the 0.85 spaces we're applying to what is identified as variable in the ordinance, which is the assisted living facility. That is the same parking ratio that's used for Summerby. And it's the same parking ratio that was approved for the Clarendale, which is not yet built, but is on Franklin Road, just south of Gateway Village. So we're not asking for that lower number. We're asking for a higher number, 1.2, because that's more consistent with what Erickson sees in their communities throughout the nation. So happy to answer any questions that you may have, and happy to go into more detail on any of the modification of standards as well.
All right, thank you. Commission, questions?
How much staff is typically present to support a community like this? And I can imagine the daily trips, these individuals aren't driving a lot, but how much staff would we expect?
They have about 500 employees total and on 3 shifts. Yeah, come on. You can come up, introduce yourself, say hello.
Good evening, Aldermen and Planning Commissioners. Thank you. I'm Marianne Navarro with Erickson Senior Living. Thank you for having us here tonight and for your patience with some of the technical difficulties that we were having earlier. Yes, at build out, as Greg said, that we would anticipate for a community of this size to have about 500 employees. Of course, that would scale up once we reached full build out. So we would anticipate with the first phase, we would probably have around 110, 120 employees, but that would be across 3 shifts. So about a little less than 50% would be the the day shift starting around 6 or 7. The shifts are staggered, but around 6 or 7 a.m. Some of the healthcare, the nurses, the housekeepers and such, security would come in. And then there is a middle shift, and that is about 30% or so. And then the remaining percentage would be like the overnight shift. So it is staffed 24 hours a day. So they're not all there at the same time. And those shifts and start times and end times are staggered.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Sure, go ahead.
I wanted to get one piece of feedback from the group tonight. Greg had mentioned some roadway improvements on Paytonsville Road and Goose Creek Bypass. We've had a lot of discussions on what's going to be required, and anything that we've looked at will be above and beyond what the impact fees that they will pay. So one thing I'd like to hear, especially from the board and the mayor, is would the city be willing to participate in some of that funding to kind of spur this infrastructure in the Goose Creek area that we've been planning for a lot, and we're finally here with a big project that can jumpstart some of this stuff. So that's one specific thing I'd like to hear from, if you don't mind.
Alderman, you want to comment to that?
No.
I mean, how much?
Spoiler alert, we'll have some good diagrams for you at the first available wet work session. We're working through the details now to know exactly what those dollars are going to look like. We just don't have that information
I
tonight.
understand, and I figured that, and that I would just say that's really what it comes down to. I mean, it really just comes down to how much for me.
Well, yes, ditto that. But I've also seen, I think there's also some thoughts on how can we optimize some efforts in that area too, that maybe actually help us bring some money back into it. Some cut and fill work and some, additional I shared some of that with Eric even on Monday. And so I think if there's some other ways that we can partner with the development that allows us to get it going sooner, but yet even experience some savings, I think that'd be a great, I'm really open to exploring that for sure.
I think when we looked at our capital projects list, extension of Crothers Parkway percolated pretty high on the list, if I remember correctly. I don't remember whether the Paytonsville Road connection there, the new Paytonsville Road, was that part of that same project, or is that a separate
It's
project?
a separate project. There are some dollars kind of targeted for this improvement. It just hasn't been funded yet.
Yeah. Well, I think this is the growth area. I think we have to look at how we can supplement to get the roads there. And I'd be willing to look at it. Of course, depends on how much it is. We've got a lot of things we need to fund.
I would say to Alderman Brown's point, one of the creative things that our team has brought to the table is, even though it requires more right-of-way dedication, leaving the 2 lanes that Paytonville Road has now, and then on Erickson's side, building 2 new lanes. So we're not having to tear up Paytonsville Road. We have 2 lanes there. We come over, create the median that's required by the street network plan, and build 2 new lanes on the eastern side of Paytonsville Road now. So there is a lot of creativity that's being brought to the table, a lot of problem solving, trying to figure out how to build this infrastructure and get the city what it needs.
Okay. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'll go ahead and chime in as well. Mr. Mayor, you're right. I've got it pulled up right here. When we looked at our CIP ranking, the Goose Creek Bypass, Carruthers Parkway extension across the board, it actually ranked number 5. And when you take out the first one, which was Fire Station number 3 upgrade, and then sidewalk improvements on Eddy Lane, 2 projects, number 2 and number 3, and then the Battle Avenue bridge replacement, this is the top transportation item that we have on our CIP list right now. So
Thanks for pulling that out.
Planning Commission, any other thoughts on this end?
Well, I did have a question. Your modification of standard 9.5.1, you were talking about asking that you not have to make the connectivity to delete that, but right now, really, you don't know that you were even going to have to make it. So
Right.
even considering that. So really, that's kind of a wait and see.
It's
type
a wait
thing,
and
right?
see.
Because we're not really about the slopes there. The other thing, the question on your modification of standards, the request for modification of standard on parking, that's in addition to what's required for, well, I'm asking, I guess I'm making a statement, but actually it's a question, Greg. You're asking that's in addition to what's required for your staff, or is that just for the entire project?
It's
You're
for-
including that for staff also?
It parks staff as well.
Because the reason I'm asking that, because I'm a little sensitive to that now, is because my aunt's going through some things now, right? And we have a particularly large family. I know that if you look at, for most people, you know, when their folks enter into a facility like this, and I'm sure you guys maybe take this into consideration, but our family's very interactive, and we're there all the time. I mean, all the time, quite a few of us. And so, you know, I know for some people, they, you know, when their people enter, you know, they go and you may not see them. But so you guys are really looking at numbers, hard numbers to justify this, that you will have enough for visitors. Because I know you have independent folks may have a car, but there's some people there for memory care and all that. I just want to make sure with your staff, with visitors and all of that, you have enough adequate parking. But the 1.2 in your estimation be enough. I just want to make sure we're good on that.
We can provide example in this
Okay.
middle.
So
to
yeah,
staff.
I'd like to see, please put that in there so I can feel comfortable with that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, you mentioned phasing, and I was just kind of curious what that phasing looked like, maybe from maybe
Sure.
the very first modification of standard diagram.
Before they even start their sales, they want to have Paytonsville Road finished. They know that their residents will not tolerate driving through a construction site to their home. So that has to be done on the front end. It's going to be the number one thing. When Erickson starts their development, they want to start with the, I'll say it's kind of the heart and soul. It's what creates and makes the community. And that's the Central Park here and the amenities and the restaurants and the things that people are going to be attracted to when they live here. From there, Mayor, it's probably going to work almost in a clockwise rotation around. The assisted living facility will be one of the last things that's constructed on the property, because once the assisted living facility opens, you have to run it and manage it like it's fully occupied. So Erickson, in their model, it's about health and wellness. And they want to discourage people from going into an assisted living facility until they absolutely have to. So they want to cater to you in your home. They want you to be comfortable in your home, and they're going to meet those needs. Now, if there's a need for assisted living in phase 2 or 3, they might take a wing of one of the buildings that they're building out and then treat that really more like an assisted living until they get that new facility built. So that's kind of how the phasing of this development works.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation.
Okay.
Sure. One of you.
I'll ask the question first. So mine was more about the modification of standard, and I suppose this is for you, Greg, and maybe even staff, and it's regarding the adjustment down to allow at grade level entry to the properties. I'm assuming that there is a reason for us to have a minimum 18 inches above grade at front facade. What is the reason for that on buildings?
We're going to bring up our zoning expert to describe the rationale, but it has to do, there's several reasons that we actually want to have that in there. But for facilities like this, I will say, we have always supported this modification of standards for the reasons that are necessary.
And I suppose what I'm looking at is if it's an aesthetic standard, I'm less concerned about it than if it is some sort of a protective standard to prevent floods or egress of something that you would not want to come into the facility.
Yeah. It's a little bit of both. It does align generally with the building code's requirements for crawl spaces, but in these situations, we do allow, or we do recommend modifications that are for seniors, but it also is an aesthetic reason that the building doesn't kind of sink into the ground, that it's up and you can see the door well. It's more of a prominent facade on that first floor. It also helps with privacy sometimes, especially when the buildings are very close to the street, to have a little bit of lift in there to get to the windows in the front rooms.
Thank you for that.
That you are saying they're really for many older people being able to just not have a step up or down, or down,
Wheelchair.
even worse.
Alderman Baggett.
So my only comment was going to be really towards the architecture, and this is a 1,200 units, 6 stories, max, some of them, and it's a lot of white. And by the way, I think it looks, what I've seen looks great. But I think with this amount of this quantity of structures, the height, the scaling, some differentiation in the architectural style of some of these buildings would be preferable, so that we're not, because I looked at some of the other Erickson properties, and it does seem like you kind of go with the same, whatever style is chosen for the location. It's everywhere on all the buildings, which they all look great. But I do think that breaking that up possibly on a campus this large would be nice to see some differentiation. If this area is going to be active in developing, having it appear or feel like there's some differentiation between the structures architecturally would be nice, even though it doesn't look like a hospital, which is a great job. But I do think, but just some differentiation between the different structures would be my comment on the architectural style, if this whole campus is built out.
Yeah, that was one of my concerns as well, is some of these long walls, just different facade types, some setbacks, some protrusions, whatever it is to break it up so it doesn't look like just a monolithic wall that would mimic a hospital.
I see our architect and our Erickson team nodding along with you, so I think
Yeah.
that they're in agreement, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that as well. Take a shot of Emory Apartments over there across from Lifetime. Show them what not to do.
What not to do. Yeah.
Because when we talked about breaking up the building, they broke up the buildings, but all the buildings together were saying the building, it was all the same.
Repetitive.
And
Ditto.
the repetitiveness of it, I think is what Patrick's talking about, let's break that up. Go down Main Street, look at all the different facades on the different buildings of Main Street. Not that we need to do that, it's not Main Street, you're not creating Main Street, but just some of the materials and some of the colors and things of that nature, and maybe the pitches and things of that nature. So I think that helps blend that community.
Mix in some other architectural styles.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
All right. Any closing thoughts from the applicant? We need to move on to the
I
next.
appreciate your
what,
time.
Mr.
Thank you for
Chair?
the comments. Sorry, this was a.
If I could just get 30 seconds here, I just wanted to share with the Planning Commission as well as with the Bowman members that when this first came about, I asked for the Erickson to meet with the Stream Valley, Berry Farms, and Ladd Park HOA presidents, as well as some of their board members. And I attended those meetings. They were about an hour apiece. And they had very similar questions, but did not have any glaring concerns regarding this development. And they're outside the 500-foot communication range, but I still wanted them to be well informed about this.
All right, thanks. Item number 2, overview of 5-year zoning ordinance update. Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've spent the last 5 months in joint conceptual workshops talking about potential amendments to the zoning ordinance, and we are here. It's time to give a full overview of all the topics that are moving forward for the actual update, which is on the agenda later tonight for voting for a recommendation by the Planning Commission, but I'll get more into the time frame for that later in the presentation. So tonight we just wanted to highlight all the topics that we've brought forward just as an overview. We've really looked at these in pieces and parts over the last months, and so this is just an overview as a refresher, and if you have any questions, let us know. So first, there have been state law changes, and they address telecommunication tower review timeframes, annexation public notice requirements, privately owned landfills or solid waste facilities, and then case law change related to sidewalk requirements for single-family residential for very small developments. There are also floodplain map updates. We've received those final maps from FEMA, and we are required to adopt those before the end of the year. There's a new RC4 district, or Regional Commerce 4 district, and that's related to the number of stories, 4 being the max. This is resulting from an Envision Franklin update. It includes these areas that you see on the map, plus one more that you'll see on the next page. It's that northwest corner of the Mallory McEwen Drive intersection that also recommends 4 stories in Envision Franklin. So this also includes this rezoning and incorporation of some of this text into the transitional features section so that the height better blends and better transitions to surrounding residential and uses.
Is your mic on?
Any questions about the mapping or required changes from state law?
No. When are we going to get to the 71 different pages of different things? That's not right now.
These changes are the main changes that are in the 71
Right.
pages. So if you
We're not
have
going through all
topics
those.
within the 71 pages, we can certainly address
We're not
those
going through
because
that.
these summarize what's in the 71 pages of ordinance changes.
We've already did that.
So I'll let you go ahead and finish them.
Okay. Next is the farmstead residential building type.
Could you go
The-
back just a second
Yep.
to the McEwen-Mallory Lane intersection? How do we handle that? Because right now, I think the height restriction, the height is much greater than what this says, if I remember correctly. So how do you handle that with the property owner?
Do you mean for the remaining quadrants of the intersection?
Yes, I'm sorry.
It really does. What's surrounding is still RC12 on the east side, and
Okay.
then PD on the southwest side. So we would apply Envision Franklin when there's a rezoning request or a development plan that comes in. That's when we would apply the transitional features. And we're codifying this as well, so it will actually be in the zoning ordinance as the height maximums in transitional features section. So on the one quadrant that fits nicely with the RC4, we're going ahead and proposing rezoning that to the RC4 district because that is the 4 stories. That's the one with the hill, and it's already developed. The others, we would apply transitional features when any project comes in, really, because we're codifying it in the zoning ordinance in Chapter 8.
And this is kind of an unusual area,
Yes.
especially with the school there and all the other.
It is. It is.
I just have a concern on the east side, the northeast and the southeast side.
Yes.
What are we proposing the height will be?
It is matching what is in Envision Franklin in this last update. So it is 8 stories in height. Well, I'll just read it. Building heights may be up to 8 stories on sites around the intersection of Mallory Lane and McEwen Drive. If the massing and scale is graduated and 20-foot building stepbacks are utilized by the top of the 4th story. The vacant parcel located between Centennial High School and McEwen Drive shall also not exceed 8 stories in height. The parcel on the northwest corner is limited to 4 stories, but we're going to address that through zoning.
So I'm just still concerned about the 8 stories because it blocks off the view. And I know in the northeast section in front of the Toyota place there and before Kohl's, you have a gradual goes down. And so that would be okay if you maybe put 8 stories there, maybe not, maybe it looks like 6. I'm still concerned with the height there because when you're driving, you see the Nissan building in the back, you see the hills, but then I just don't want it to feel lopsided. You've got Whole Foods on the other side, which is 1 story. You've got the hill on the other side, which I think can play off that catty corner section over there by Centennial maybe. But I'm still concerned with that northeast section being too high. I just am. I
Yeah,
don't know how that
where would the
play
8
out.
stories be measured from, the high side or the low side?
Of the
It would be
train
measured from grade at the street.
at the street?
At the street.
Well, sorry, at the front facade of the building.
Okay.
See, you go down, it goes down a little ways.
So that may be a
Yeah,
10-story building.
it
At the
can be.
bottom.
Well, it could be, but it's, I just have a problem with that northeast corner. I just don't think it fits. I think it'll look lopsided.
Yeah, I think that's where kind of some of my question was coming is, I'm confused about how that looks
How
when I
balances
drive by
out.
it. So
Yeah.
that was kind of the reason for the question.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know what the property owner's expecting since we changed Envision Franklin and now this. So that was just,
Can you remind, we discussed this for the Envision
did.
Franklin update, and I think if I recall, but correct me if I'm wrong, it was like 12 stories or something much higher, and we took it down
was.
to
We
8.
We did.
decreased it.
We went through this discussion.
And this is the
That's
outcome
correct.
of an
It is.
already
Yes,
existing
we did.
decrease.
got you.
We went through this.
That's correct.
For
It
several
is-
discussions.
It is zoned RC 12 today on the north and east sides
Yes.
of the intersection. And this lowers the
To
3
8.
quadrants to 8, and then the northwest quadrant down to 4.
Yes.
So this is a reduction. I guess the
Yes.
question then is, should it be reduced
it
further?
reduced?
We, for the Envision Franklin purposes, we stopped there, but the comments were well received.
12 just is wholly inappropriate, that area.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to get this changed. I'm still not really happy with the 8 because I don't know how that, look, it depends on the train and how far it goes down. I'd like some more information on that, but we can talk about that. I don't want to eat up the rest of the time. Okay, thanks.
And there is a step back that's a 20-foot deep step back, which is significant by the 4th story. So that does help reduce the overall sense of massing. But it is an Envision Franklin that way, so that would really be the first step, is to go back when we look at Envision Franklin again to
Yeah,
revisit the
we probably-
heights.
We probably should.
So
If
this
you
is
take a look-
matching.
if you take a look at Toyota, it's down in, so it doesn't sit up so high, and Kohl's is 1 story, so.
Yeah, I forgot about the RC12 reductions. That makes me
Yes,
feel a lot
we
better
did. We
about that.
reduced
Yeah.
it. We went through
I
this
was-
several times. Yes, we did, ad nauseum.
Yeah.
I have, is it okay if I ask my
Go
question?
ahead.
It's unrelated to this, but it's on the flood maps. Just for my clarity, are we required to, it sounds like we're required to adopt those, like there's no leeway. And I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, I just want to make sure we understand that, because we obviously got an email, and I actually, I understand the concern, but it sounds like we just need to adopt it anyway. Is that
I think
fair?
we have to do that.
Yes.
We are required
We
to
are.
adopt them.
Why
the
would,
deadline,
but
yeah.
why wouldn't we though?
You have 180 days to adopt those, and should you fail to do that, then you jeopardize your standing in the National Flood Insurance.
Yes.
It's a
Why
policy.
wouldn't
Yeah.
Oh,
Welcome to the
yes.
meeting, Roger.
Yes, but why wouldn't we adopt them? I guess
Yeah,
would be my
I'm
question.
not saying I'm opposed to it. I just wanted to clarify, more or less for the record, make sure I understood the requirement, and I don't want folks in the community to be upset at us for adopting it when I think we're required to be fair.
William Holcomb, zoning planner. Because we are in the community rating system, we are required to update those maps, and we are required to adopt them to maintain eligibility in the NFIP and be in a CRS community.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
And you'll see there's panel updates that are in the text of the ordinance, and then there's the FFO and FWO zoning districts, overlay zoning districts that are also going to be updated as part of this.
Thank you.
You want to continue the presentation?
Please.
All right, moving on. Farmstead residential building type. This is a new building type. It also comes from Envision Franklin as part of the Village Green design concept. So this lays out some standards for this multifamily residential building type between 5 and 8 dwelling units per building. And the design intent is that it's an agricultural building or a farmstead building or a farmhouse. And so there are some material requirements and standards that are more of a limited palette than some of our other building types. But this is trying to achieve the design intent of that farmstead residential type building. And anytime this would come up, it would come up through the development plan approval process, so you would see that before you for consideration. Next is accessory dwellings in single-family residential districts. There are only 2 zoning districts that do not currently permit accessory dwellings as an accessory use, and that's the R2 and R3 zoning districts. So that's proposed for inclusion at this time.
And some of us, myself personally, am not in favor of doing this because there's so many places where in these areas that we're looking at right here, that an accessory dwelling would be right in the back steps of the people next door.
Rural retreats is a new use that's proposed. It's modeled after the Williamson County rural retreat use type, and it's a hospitality type use that's about guest accommodations, but is a little bit more flexible in how that's used. That would be in the PD district only, so that would also be before you all for consideration anytime one is proposed. Live work units is another use that's in Envision Franklin, and what this is a dwelling unit that has both a non-residential and a living component in the same dwelling, in the same building, in the same unit. And really this just aligns with the building code's requirements for live work units. So it's getting ahead and letting applicants know what the rules are on the end building code side when they apply for building permits. Microbreweries, craft distilleries, this is proposed as an accessory use to define that use as part of a restaurant use. So there's a clear differentiation between getting into a larger, more light industrial type use versus an accessory use to a restaurant. And adding light industrial and general warehousing in the plan district, the PD district that I've been mentioning. We talked about this, and the concept in the ordinance is to add them, but add some additional use regulations based on the feedback that these have specific use characteristics identified as part of that approval that would have to come through in a development plan and be reviewed by the commission and the BOMA on that, and any deviation from that would need to come back through for a revised development plan, because there are more impactful impacts to surrounding residential, for lack of a better way to say it, when there are light industrial or general warehousing. So this allows that review to happen, but allows some artisanal manufacturing or some other creative light industrial uses to be considered. That's all for uses. Does anyone have any questions about the uses?
I have one question. The microbrewery, on page 11, says an accessory use that is part of a restaurant principal use. Why are we opposed to just having a microbrewery, or, I think there's one up there off of Armory Road, it's just a microbrewery, but it's not part of a restaurant, it actually, they are, I mean, they serve food, but it's not an ancillary use to that, it's a microbrewery, it is a brewery, that's what they do, and they serve food along with it, vice versa, it's like different, you know.
So.
Could we not do that, or not?
Yes, yes. So that type of use falls into our light industrial category. So those larger scale microbreweries with food, with restaurants, are permitted as part of a light industrial use. This is just clarifying that accessory microbrewery type uses can be part of restaurants in commercial districts.
Okay.
Right now, microbreweries are in light industrial and heavy industrial zoning districts only.
But as Kelly just said, by adding light industrial as a use within the PD district, you could have PD and district or development plans that come forward into that zoning district that propose microbreweries or craft distilleries as a principal use that then you approve with a development plan.
So they could be part of that PD.
Yes.
Yes.
So if you had a PD, that might be a permitted use if it was the, okay, thanks.
That might. It just that those use characteristics would need to be clearly defined
Yeah.
as part of that approval.
Because I could see some areas in town where that would fit perfectly, but it may not be light industrial. But yet, where it sits, away from everything and where it would be appropriate, so I wouldn't want to rule it out, but you said if it comes in as part of the PD, okay, thanks.
Is the 10% based on the building square footage of the restaurant, or if it's a pad site, the whole pad?
It's based on the square footage of the restaurant itself. And we arrived at that number after studying some existing microbrewery uses as part of restaurants in Franklin.
Cool.
Okay. All right, moving on. We covered this last month, I believe, the infill in existing commercial shopping centers. Just promoting infill development in a walkable, mixed-use format to promote flexibility for additional infill on an incremental basis in some of our existing shopping centers with expansive parking lots. Telecommunication tower aesthetics. Where we landed on that was that all across the city, traditional telecommunication towers will either be enclosed or concealed within an architectural feature like a parapet, a bell tower, a water tower, or imitating nature based in this geographical area, no cactus, etc. Additional screening between new non-residential and existing residential uses. So we had talked originally about having two different sets of standards in different areas of the city, but feedback provided, here we are with just either a fence, a wall, or a berm to have that flexibility, but you require one of those items between new non-residential and existing residential development. And it should be sided to maximize the screening from the residential lots. For parking, this has been discussed also. What this ordinance is proposing is to separate out duplexes, multiplexes, and townhouses and treat those more like attached single family, like a single family dwelling with 2 spaces per unit. And then slightly reducing the multifamily residential requirements so for a 1-bedroom unit, instead of 2.25 spaces per unit, it's 1.5 spaces per unit. And for a 2-bedroom unit, it's 2.25 spaces instead of 3 spaces. And this aligns with the modifications of standards that have been approved over over the past years. It also includes a live-work unit requirement for 2 spaces per unit plus 1 space per employee. It reduces offices from 4 spaces to 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet, and adds rural retreats in, but that's really variable based on what the actual use characteristics and peak demands are.
And, you know, this one is one that, I know I said it before, but I gotta say, Lord, I think we're gonna live to regret this. But anyway, that plus $2.50 will not buy you coffee, but there's my 2 cents, I tell you.
Signage on parapets. This is for 1-story buildings to allow signage to be above the roof line, which if you look at that example at Finks, the green line shows where the roof line is, but the parapet is higher. So this helps retail storefronts that have high glazing needs to have their signage be a little higher on the building when it still looks like it's part of that building wall. Expiration of a variance, increasing that time frame from 1 year to 2 years. But if it's with a vested plan, then it just tracks with the vested plan. It makes it much easier for tracking for both the applicant and city staff. And then other minor changes that are hierarchy changes, organizational changes, especially related to the streets and circulation chapters, the parking and transit, and historic resource chapters, just enhancing usability in the new format that we have from the 2019 ordinance and making it more clickable and more easy to find certain elements in the chapters by putting them in sections and getting those into those chapter pages where you can just click to the chapter, then click to the topic. It makes it really easy to use. Plus some definition clarifications, reference updates, other minor wording adjustments and corrections. So that's an overview of all the topics. It is a lengthy ordinance, even with one change. When you add farmstead residential building type, you've got to add it in chapter 6, and you've got to add it in every place that residential use types are mentioned. And so that's throughout the ordinance, and that's just one of those changes. So it really is looking at it like a web, and you've got to make sure that all the different pieces work together with the new uses, the new terminology. And so it is a very lengthy ordinance. Plus there's at least 12 pages of maps that show the floodplain changes and the RC changes.
Yeah, 11 or 12 maps that just do the floodplain changes.
Yes, just to make sure that you can see all of those very clearly in the paper formats without blowing up.
Wow.
Well, and
As
let me
far
tell
as
you,
timeline,
just
this is
trying
the
out-
last slide.
I
I'm
was just gonna
sorry.
say, on the flood maps, I had to write down specifically how the little things that were the stripes and the solids, and which one goes with the floodway and the flood fringe and everything. It's not something that you can just look at and say, okay. But I mean, it has been marked out very well.
What you see on the screen now is the timeline. Tonight, we're at the Joint Conceptual Workshop, but later tonight is the ordinance recommendation by Planning Commission. We are on a tight timeline to get all the way through the process before the December 20th deadline from FEMA for updating the floodplain maps and the panels. So you'll actually see 2 ordinances on the agenda tonight because state law requires that any type of material regulation is in its own separate ordinance that comes before the body. We haven't had one of these yet, but now we do. So you'll look at all the changes except material changes, and then in a second ordinance, you'll have material changes in that ordinance.
And that's specific to building materials on a specific building type. So, for instance, the farmstead residential building type has specified building materials, and that's what Kelly's referencing, as
Yes.
well as fencing. There's some
Yes, there's the farmstead residential materials that are part of that building type. And then there's one other change. We went ahead and included it in the materials ordinance to address wire fencing behind open fencing, like a 4-board horse fence has gaps underneath, and there have been property owner requests about wanting to put wire fencing down there just to keep pets in. So that's part of that second ordinance as well. So that's it. Are there any questions about, yeah?
I can't remember who all I talked to, but we had talked about the idea of soccer fields in floodway. We allow it for ourselves for the Southeast Park, but it's still not allowed elsewhere. Just an open field, open passive field for used for soccer fields or whatever. Did we make that change in this set of zoning?
There aren't any other changes related to floodplain in this particular update.
Okay. All right, well, I'll take that.
All right.
If it's approved to go to Bona, we have to send it to Bona, and then they have an opportunity to speak at the public hearing.
Yes, there are 2 public hearings. One is tonight and the public comment period. And then it goes to work session and first reading November 12th, then on to the second reading and public hearing on the 26th, with third and final reading on December 10th, before the end of the year, with an effective date of January 1, 2025.
All right, I guess the only, of all these items so far, the only one that seems concerning is the accessory dwelling units and single family. I mean, some of these in R3 especially, there's no room for any other units, and they have HOAs that wouldn't allow it anyway. R2 is a little different. They're more open, larger lots. Was there any consideration gone into just comparing what can be done as to this recommendation?
So we didn't really go into individual properties to look at the feasibility on a case-by-case basis because every property is very unique, and we just really don't have the bandwidth to actually review all the properties within R3. We could take a few examples, of course, but I don't think that would even be representative of everything in R3. As you mentioned, the subdivisions that have HOAs, certainly if they have restrictions within their HOA, that would supersede any of our zoning requirements, and they would not be able to do the accessory dwelling anyways. But really from a trying to expand housing options standpoint, and some of the updates that were made with Envision Franklin recently, we thought that by allowing accessory dwellings in R3, even if only a handful of accessory dwellings are built, it does at least increase the housing supply to extent and allow some additional options. So it still seems like it would be worthwhile from that perspective, but we definitely understand if you all have differing opinions and would like for that not to be recommended onto the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, that's understandable as well.
Well, we've talked about this before, and some of the areas in Hill Estates and those subdivisions have deep lots and the opportunity to have an accessory dwelling there. I think they should be given that opportunity, and that was what we talked about. And I don't know what the consensus of everybody is, but there are several people, they may not ever build one, but to have the opportunity and to have a relative maybe build something back there, I think to me it made sense for us to change that.
And I don't have a problem with it if it makes sense. It's just some of the R3 on here, I can tell you, it's like we're allowing something that we know that's not going to happen.
Well, I concur with Alma because a friend of mine ex-basketball player of Chattanooga, has just built an entire community of tiny homes. And in Hill Estate, and I own a home in Hill Estates, houses back then were not built like they are now, where you can reach out and touch your neighbor. We have large lots, and in my mom's backyard, my mom's gone now, but I still call it my mom's house, we could put 3 tiny homes if we wanted to. We have large lots there. In Rolling Meadows on some lots, we could put 3 tiny homes if we wanted to. So most people wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. But they could if they wanted to. So there's an opportunity. So now in these, where we're building houses where we can reach out and touch your neighbor and say Gesundheit if they sneeze. So in a lot of older neighborhoods, there is the opportunity to do that. So I think we should allow it, whether they take advantage of it or not. I just don't think we should be that restrictive on some neighborhoods who do not have HOAs and could do this if they wanted to.
Yeah, I agree.
That's why we added it.
Yeah,
And then
that's
now
why
we
we
have
added
talk about
it to
taking it
begin
out.
with.
Yeah, we
So,
talked about this
yeah,
in great
we did,
detail
we
as-
did.
as well.
We vetted, I think we vetted every one of these changes quite a bit, in my opinion, but anyway.
Well, and I know too, there was discussion that on, one of them, most of them all have HOAs, but, even if you have all that land and everything together, even if it allows just a few other additional dwelling units in an appropriate place, that's worth it. And also, I think looking at it long-term plan, like very long-term, we're getting stuff and opportunity in now ahead of it. Whereas what might happen 25, 50 years from now, it sets it up.
I have several comments I want to make about this. First of all, I did not have a chance to go back and look. What is the acreage required per lot in R2 and R3? Because, as I say, there was just so much there.
The minimum in R2 is 15,000 square feet. And the minimum lot size in R3 is 9,000 square feet.
Well, let me tell you, 9,000 square feet is probably what part of an acre? Maybe a sixth of an acre or something like that? Yeah, it would be. So think about that.
About a fourth.
Oh,
About a fourth
acres.
of an acre. 43,560 square feet is an acre.
So, but as I say, in places that I know about, that would really be truly in somebody's backyard or somebody's side yard, and you're talking about, with 5 feet away from other dwelling units. That's not, especially if you've got kind of a big house. There's not a lot of land around it.
And in some cases where you do have the minimum lot size, that will be the case, and they may not be able to achieve an accessory dwelling unit on the lot. There are other lots within R3 subdivisions that are larger or deeper that may allow for that flexibility. So we understand that not every lot will qualify.
But let me tell you, what about the people that live next door to those lots? I mean, really, it could be right, as I say, on their back porch, almost. So, and I we were talking about some of the places that do have extra space, and I'd like to get some examples of some places like that, because there could be, places that it would work. But as I say, it's not just the person and it's not just the person who is living in the house. It's the people that are on lots right next to them.
We do have some built-in requirements for accessory dwellings, because this has been a topic that's sometimes concerning to nearby residents. And so there are maximum limits on the size of accessory dwellings, that they can't exceed 50% of the footprint of the main house. And also that main windows and doors face away from adjacent properties and toward the main house or toward the interior of the lot as well, to try to help with privacy of adjacent properties.
But I'd maybe like to see some examples of where they might work. But as I say, I know some places where that definitely would be affecting the next door neighbors.
Any additional thoughts from Alderman or other commission members on this one? All right.
Because let me tell you, I was also looking back at some of these things. There are some lots that were like 1/8 of an acre. The lot size being, and I don't know what this was on, 6,500 square feet. I don't know where that is, but
That's
that was
the
in
minimum.
23.2.6.
That's the bare minimum of the R4 residential district. It's context-based, so it's looking at the average of the lot sizes along the particular block, but in no case shall be less than 6,500 square feet. And accessory dwellings are already permitted as an accessory use in that district.
Yeah, we're just talking about 2 and 3 here.
I know, but I'm just saying, well, think about that. Just think about an accessory dwelling being allowed on a lot that's maybe 1/8 of an acre.
Be hard to do. Any additional thoughts or comments?
Oh, I had some other questions about, let's see, well, if you're looking at the 71 pages that are on the agenda for tonight, I think this is on, okay, on 6.3 or something like that. But whenever it's requiring streets to be extended and have to be connect to surrounding streets. And let me see, I don't know what pages those are on. I was trying to put this together, but there's so much on it.
Is it 9.6.3 connection to surrounding street network?
Okay, let me see. 9.6
On page 23.
on page 23. I just got it. But it's saying, whenever you're talking about to connect to surrounding street network, I guess that is just for connectivity. I mean, that's just supposed to be what this is.
And although you see that it's all in black bold, it's not really changing the requirements themselves. This was one of the chapters that was really just reorganized and restructured.
Well, let me tell you, I have the printed out 2019 version, and I was looking to see, you know, much of this that's in bold looks different from what is currently right now.
There may be wording changes, but the general intent is the same. There's still requirements for connectivity in all directions in the current ordinance.
But if we're talking about, let's see, to adjacent properties, that it would go out to the adjacent property, I guess, property line. Is that right?
That is required today under the current.
So give it, I'd love to see some examples of where that's done. I mean, I guess we can't do it tonight. As I say, with everything we did last week with Vish and Franklin, I mean, I hadn't had time to really go through all of this as much as I would personally like to. But another thing that I've also noticed is on things that are being proposed in like Village Green and things like that, if you have them connected to some things that are much less dense or have much larger lots, and then you're saying, okay, they've got to be connected there. That's something that I'm hearing a concern expressed about.
And that is why we have the modification of standards process, and you hear so many connectivity modifications of standards where the neighbors do not want those connections. That is kind of the approval process by which those things can happen normally. And there's generally, we want to support as much connectivity as we can. So through the staff review, we think these standards are vitally important. But there is a mechanism, the modification of standards route, by which you can make an exception to those rules.
Right.
But staff, if just correct me, in Alderman Peterson, but we have discussed every change. We've discussed every change that we're going to look at tonight. Am I not right? Yes.
We have not discussed every one of them, no. They put them together.
There's some wording changes.
That's what I'm saying. Other than, substantial change, other than wording, but every substantial change we have discussed. I know they've done some clerical and administrative changes, but every substantial change we have discussed.
Yeah, there's some wording changes
Right.
we've done to clarify items that have come up during our review
Right.
and have not been as clear as they should have been.
But other than that, we have ad nauseum.
All right, we've reached end of our
Yeah, that's right.
time slot here. Seeing no other discussion, meeting adjourned.